That's required, Madam Chair. Thank you. The next item on today's agenda is item number 8, which is APP 2026-0305, full planning permission for the alteration and extension to a dwelling house at 11 Culliona Drive. And we have Jim Martin presenting the paper today. We also have a request to speak from Mr. Neil Gray, the agent, and Rachel Reid, the applicant, who are both here in person. Committee, do we agree to hear the agent and the applicant?
Yes.
I'd like to take this on, please. Thank you. Mr. Gray and Ms. Reid, in line with the guidance you have received, please do not speak unless I invite you to do so, and please do not interrupt the other speakers. If you do, you may be removed from the meeting. You will be given 5 minutes to speak between you, and after that, members may ask you questions. You will then be entitled to remain in the meeting, although you are not invited to speak again. Once the committee has made its decision, you will be asked to leave the meeting. Do you understand? Thank you. Mr. Martin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you stated, this is an application for full planning permission for the alteration extension of the dwelling house at 11 Culliona Drive, Banff. This is an existing split-level house, or at least gives the appearance of that, being 2-storey from the front elevation and single to the rear. The design, finishes and scale of the property as it stands are compatible with the neighbours immediately surrounding it. The proposal is for a full 2-storey extension to the front of the house. That's the existing elevations as shown on the screen just now. Moving on to the existing floor plans and then on to the proposed details we have in front of members just now. This described in detail in paragraphs 2.4 to 2.6 of the report. It would also involve closing up the existing current driveway to the southeast of the frontage and opening up a new entrance to the northwest end of the site frontage. There's been one letter of representation objecting to the proposal on the grounds as listed in paragraph 3.1 of the report. In terms of consultation responses, both Natural Heritage and Roads Services, the Roads Development, come back with no objections and no comments to make on the proposal. The main policy considerations for this are policies P1 and P3 of the Local Development Plan, 14 and 16 of NPF 4. Whilst the principle of extending a house may be acceptable, it still must be assessed in terms of visual impact and a potential adverse impact on neighbouring perimeters. As members will have noted, Aberdeenshire Local Development Plan Policy Appendix 9 on buildings design is also specifically referred to in paragraph 6.4 of the report. And as discussed in paragraphs 6.5 to 6.9, the impact has been assessed in terms of the impact on the street scene as well as the immediate neighbour to the southeast. The assessment concludes that the development as proposed would have a negative impact on the street scene. It would be significant in terms of the building line and visual amenity. It would also have an overshadowing and overbearing impact on the neighbour immediately to the southeast. The conclusion is thus that the development as proposed is contrary to Local Development Plan P1 and P3 and with NPF 4 policies 14 and 16. I'd say projecting from the front here as members and see, just referring back to the slide on screen here just now, that proposed new extension is projecting out from the existing frontage by 5.4 metres. That's quite, well, certainly in the view of the planning service, an unacceptable intrusion into the street scene. Moving forward, the floor plan layout as proposed. Again, members can note from this the existing frontage line being indicated by cursor here and the proposed extension out to the front and how close that comes to the front boundary wall with the street is indicated by my cursor currently. Then moving forward to some photographs of this, there's some visualizations, including the shadowing, the overshadowing, with particular emphasis on the neighbour to the southeast, highlighted in green on the plan. And moving forward, this is the existing frontage of the property, showing, as I mentioned earlier, the apparent 2-storey, although the ground floor in this instance is an entrance lobby and a garage. It's single-storey to the rear. Moving forward, this is again the application property to the left side of the photograph and the neighbouring property with the boat in the garden to immediately next door. Another view looking back with the neighbouring property here and the application site here to the left of the photograph. One of the street scenes, it's difficult to make out, Chair, from this photograph exactly where it is, but as a reference point, members can just about make out the white boat in the neighbour's garden right at the rear of the photograph. Moving forward, another view of the street scene, looking down the way. And that, in fact, Chair, concludes all the photographs for the presentation. And if the members have any specific questions relating to this, I will do my best to answer them. Obviously, of course, you've got the applicant and agent for the application here as well, who I dare say will be able to answer any further questions that committee have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Findlater.
No, thanks, Chair. Jim was mentioning there about the building to the southeast, and stated that the application would have an overshadowing impact. Can you show me a photograph of that building, please, if you have it, and point out, please?
So that's one of the photographs that I indicated earlier, Chair, showing both the application property here to the left-hand side of the photograph and the neighbouring property to the southeast, which is the one I'm indicating with a cursor currently, with the boat in the front garden. I'll go back another photograph, Chair. Yeah, the application property to the left-hand side of the photograph and the neighbouring property here with the boat, again, the boat in the garden. If it helps Councillor Findlater, I can go back a couple of slides as well. I can get the computer to behave. And indicate this is the overshadowing information that was submitted in support of the application by the agents. So again, as I say, we have Mr. Gray here who might be able to offer committee further information about this. This indicates the overshadowing of the neighbouring property in green with the application property in blue. That, I think, hope Chair answers Councillor Findlater's query, or it helps inform Councillor Findlater. But again, I'll be able to try and speak to any questions or address any questions in relation to that. Thank you.
Just going back briefly, Chair, on that one. The overshadowing aspect of it then would actually be the front of the southeast building, not the building itself, but the sort of tarmac bit where the boat is. Going by your diagrams there, the overshadowing would be on the front of that southeast property, but I'm sure that'll be raised within the next bit. I was just trying to get your point about overbearing and overshadowing there in the southeast building. It wouldn't actually be the building itself, it would be the front of the southeast building.
Looking for me to come back on that, Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's just, again, to reiterate here, as members will see from, again, there's the current slide up on screen. I appreciate that it's not the biggest of images, but this shows the time 8:45 on the 15th of April. There's no overshadowing of the front of the property, the neighbouring property in green here. 15th of June, members will see there is a degree of overshadowing to the frontage of the neighbouring property. And then the 15th of July, so a larger portion of the front of the neighbouring property is affected by overshadowing. Again, I hope that's to the advantage, to the information of Councillor Findlater. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, James.
Thank you. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Jim. I just wondered, and it may be something that the agent picks up on as well, but have there been any discussions about the scale of this extension? Has there been any negotiations about what on the face of it appears pretty significant? So, I mean, it would just be helpful to, is that a key criteria here in terms of the extension in principle? As an extension is fine, but it's the scale of it. Thanks.
Yes, Chair, a couple of points in response to Councillor Reynolds there. Firstly, to say that, yes, it is the scale of what's proposed here that is the main concern of the planning service. It could be that something much smaller would be accepted, but we've still got the issue there of breaking the building line of the street. And again, I can refer members to the slide on the screen here again just now, which helpfully shows the neighbouring properties of number 9 and 13, and then the proposed extension sticking out the front of number 11. And members will see that that juts out quite a distance in front of the established building line of the street. So that's the significant concern here, the planning service. Now, in terms of approaching the agents, I haven't been directly involved myself, but I understand that there has been discussion with the agents about reducing the scale of this, and indeed there was a slight reduction, I think by about 0.6 of a metre, if I remember correctly, in my original proposal that was put in. But that is a matter that Mr. Gray will be able to answer, I'm sure, when he addresses committee. Thank you.
Can I just come back briefly, Chair?
Yes.
Yes. So thanks, Jim. That's very helpful. In terms of the building line, can you just confirm, not least for the public record, that when you're making reference to the building line, we're not just talking about the adjacent properties to the southeast, are we? We're talking, I mean, what in essence I'm asking, Jim, is there any similar or comparable development anywhere in the close vicinity of what is... I'm getting echo here. Hello?
Yeah, Councillor Reynolds.
Yeah, sorry, I was just getting feedback. So I think to finish that point off, is there anything in the close vicinity when you make reference to the building line, just so that anybody listening to this recording, as well as elected members, can be clear, you're not just talking about the adjacent property and the building line there, but is there anything comparable in the nearby vicinity, or you know, that compares with this in any shape or form, or is this particularly unusual and unique in terms of the local vicinity and area? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just come back on that one. A good point raised by Councillor Reynolds there. Hopefully members can see on screen, I've reverted back to the title page of the presentation. Again, sadly the scale requires a little bit of squinting at to get a full view of it. But members can see down the property, the application site obviously here, highlighted in the centre of the screen, but members will be able to pick out, albeit it's not in great detail, but that the building line of the street, there are some slight variations to it in terms of distances from the frontage of the property to the street line, but it's a fairly consistent line along the whole street here. I'm not aware of any other examples in the immediate vicinity of large extensions projecting forward of a building line in the manner as proposed under the current application. I can, however, send members back to not entirely similar circumstances, but another case where a large extension was proposed forward of the building line. That one, some members may recall, was in White Hills. And again, the committee refused 2 applications there where there was quite a significant forward extension, which would have intruded on the building line of the street. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Cassie.
Yeah, just looking at slide 9, the overshadowing aspect of it. I note there's a graph within there pointing out that there's shadowing at certain times of the year, but there's only 4 diagrams to demonstrate what that is. Do we have access to an annual overshadowing sort of diagram pattern? Or do we take what's in that graph?
Personally, Chair, I'm not aware of anything further information with regard to this, although Mr. Gray, as the agent, may be able to speak and address that question for members as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Findlater.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me back in. It was just when Jim, you were saying about the building line in the street, and you mentioned White Hills. The difference, of course, is that White Hills was a conservation area. Well, this is not. So I'm trying to see why the officers are about the relevance of building line in this, when these are all detached modern houses, whereas the likes of White Hills, they were really old buildings, and the building line itself, and all these buildings are different, you know, that they might have the same length of driveway, etc., but they're all sort of different buildings because a lot of them are built to spec, you know, to how the applicants want them. So I'm trying to get over the relevance that the officers have put with building line being a thing because it's not a conservation area, and I would think, you know, buildings being sort of different would be a good aspect. So that, you know, having all streets the same looking, which that's just a personal thing with me. Just a point on that one, Chair. Why the relevance to this when it's not a conservation area and you're equating it to decisions we've made in a conservation area? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Jim, do you want to come back? I wasn't sure that the White Hills one was a conservation area.
Just coming back on that, Chair, as you pointed out, that property, if I remember correctly, was not in the conservation area, but also to point out to members that when referring to building lines for a proposed extension like this, that is not a matter which is exclusive to conservation area. It's a design consideration which the planning service takes into account in any development, not just in conservation areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Cox?
Yeah, I'm very, very familiar with this setting here, having lived in the locality and driven down that road several times. I'm at a slight loss as to the shadowing effect, considering the direction where the house is set and where the sunset is. And there's virtually no shadowing effect because before the sun came round, it'd be pretty dark. So these are clearly set out here, but knowing the direction the house faces and the sun setting, there'll be marginally, if not no, shadowing impact in my view. But anyway, I'll reserve further comments for later on. Thank you.
Councillor Cox, did you have a specific question?
Is that not the case?
Mr. Martin, I presume this work on the shadowing has got evidence behind it?
Again, that's the overshadowing information as submitted before you just now in terms of the diagrams. That's information which has come from the agents. Just like to point that out, Chair. It hasn't been provided by the planning service. So again, that's a question or a matter that Mr. Gray may be able to assist committee with questions in relation to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I don't see any further questions from Mr. Martin, so we will now ask Mr. Graves to address the committee, please. You have 5 minutes. I'll give you a 1 minute warning.
Thank you. We were approached by the client with specific needs to extend this property to allow them to live in the property for some years longer with the family. We originally considered the northwest or the upper end of the site to the front of the house, but due to the cost, as you can see from some of Mr. Martin's photographs, it would have meant there was a lot more excavation works, and it did not stack up financially. It was going to be too much of a burden on the clients to do so much work for digging out and the works in the foundations of the original property. We subsequently looked at the alternative option of coming down to the front of the house at the end we now are, to provide the facilities that our client required, and we subsequently put forward the application. We did work with the planner on this occasion to reduce as much as we could without impinging on the requirements of the client. We subsequently did do the shadow diagrams, as we have done in the past and provided for previous applications, and compared them with shadow diagrams done by an independent architect, and ours were found to be very accurate with theirs. So we felt comfortable that we were able to provide a true kind of representation of this. As such, on the shadow diagram itself, we've done through every month for the 4 rooms along, 2 which are bedrooms, 1 windows a hall, and the lounge. And we tried to keep this at a minimum, so much so that in June there would be a slight shadow of half an hour on the lounge window and 10 minutes in July. As you can see, if members were to be on that road at various times of the day, shadows are cast from also houses across the street onto the various buildings later on in the year when the sun is lower, but we've tried to keep this at a minimum to allow as little effect in any way. I'll let my client to speak as well.
Okay, so just to give you an idea, the main reason that we're looking at the extension is to provide a safe, practical and adaptable home for my family. The most important reason for the application relates to my eldest son. He was born 8 weeks prematurely, he's a twin weighing only £1.08, and since then he's faced significant challenges. Throughout his life he's experienced learning difficulties and ongoing mobility issues that have affected his daily life. He's currently undergoing specialist investigations to see what his problems are. So they're thinking it could be a neurological condition. So while it's not yet confirmed, the prognosis is his mobility will deteriorate. So his everyday life will become increasingly challenging. So the application is planning responsibly for this. So it would give like a living area for him, so he could have greater independence while still living at home with the support of his family, and then allowing us to incorporate accessible features when such times as arises. We've worked positively throughout the process and have amended the proposal we requested. We've put significant thought and consideration into creating a solution that meets our family's needs while respecting the surrounding area. I'm simply asking for the opportunity to provide a home that can support my son's needs, allowing him to remain in the family home he's known his whole life. So I respectfully ask you to support this application, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Reid. You are well in time. Committee, questions from Mr. Reid. Give something with that.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. I think you have covered the points about overshadowing that we kind of raised with Jim, the planner. I've got a question for yourself, Ian, and one for the applicant as well, really, if you don't mind. You mentioned the foundations, and I don't know a lot about building, but I definitely know in Macduff, as far as Melrose Crescent and all around there and up there, you do not mess with the foundations, because that can cause problems. And you mentioned about the foundations themselves, and what you would have to do, try to dig down a wee bit on this one, as far as the work that you've done. If you changed it more, would there be more risk to the building itself for shifts, etc., and cracks in buildings, etc., and mess with the foundations? Just a point that you raised there, and also to the applicant as well. Was this raised with the planning service? Because I do remember precedents on other planning applications, one in Memsey, the disabled person, and another one at Longman Hill, where this was taken into account as another bit. I go through the planning officer on that one, I think. I don't know if there's been any dialogue with the officers on that, with the planning service, because you know that was it took precedence over other planning matters because it was dealing with a disabled person, a person with additional needs. And if I remember, it was one in Memsey, I think. I'm nodding their head there. I don't know if that was any part of your dialogue you had.
Back to your first question, the name of the area originally when this area was developed was Sandy Hills. So I'll give you an idea of the ground type we're working with. And yeah, you're right to start to do works on what could affect the existing foundations, because can risk significant problems or exacerbate possible problems to the existing building due to the nature of the ground type there, and would cause further cost to the groundworks and the foundations would have to put in. And we discovered that through the initial investigations into doing a possible extension to the upper side of the property. Regarding the position of my clients, you know, what they needed for, due to the ongoing nature of the investigative works for our son, and the unknowing of what's going to occur, it wasn't put forward at the time to the planners. We were trying to just be able to have a space that was flexible, that could then be adapted further down the line to meet the exact requirements as and when needed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I was just about to ask the same question. For could have perhaps been helpful if that's in.
It would have been, but without knowing exact diagnosis and exact kind of problems that could have faced in the future, there could have been a lot of ifs and buts, but there is definitely, as my client said, there's the prognosis there that mobility certainly just on its own could get worse.
Thank you. Councillor Cassie.
Yeah, just very briefly on the overshadowing incident. What I asked earlier on of the planner, we got the graph saying when there is shadowing and when there isn't shadowing, and then there's the pictures, and pictures paint 1,000 words. Is there a pictorial demonstration of the predicted shadow through the year for the entire year, as opposed to just through the 3 selected months that we have in front of us?
We would have in the office, we chose to use these ones just as a kind of broad stroke, if you like, and showing on the right, the one in July, where it would affect it possibly the most, or kind of towards the most, because that's a lounge window where it's just coming across, that second one from the right. So the further images would have, we felt, as you see with the red text in the box, where there was no shadowing actually in the windows to affect the rooms, we felt were not that useful.
Yeah, it's just, I'm only saying so because the times within the graph are slightly different to the times that we have on the shadowing pictures. If you look at June, there'd be shadowing right across the board from 2030 to 21, whereas it's 20 minutes less for July. So there'll be more in June. So it might be helpful to actually see the full picture for the whole of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Can't see any further questions for the applicant or agent. Jim, do you have any comments based on the request to speak, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just a matter that's been raised by the applicants there about the child's condition there. This is potentially a protected characteristic, Chair, and as such, the application should have been subject to an integrated impact assessment to look into that. I would therefore, in light of that, Chair, I think I would respectfully suggest that this is an item that needs to be deferred for later consideration by committee to allow for the submission of appropriate information relating to that, and for the planning service to carry out an integrated impact assessment to fully ensure that that's been taken into account in forming the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I do think that would be the correct way forward. We want to make sure that we get this matter right. Councillor Finlay.
I'm nailing to argue with you, Chair. Obviously, I'm not arguing with you, Chair, on this, but I think with the other factors that have been put in, and totally respectful of the applicant putting forward this for our consideration, I think we have to deal with what's in front of us just now. I do take on board what Jim was saying about the planning service and hearing this new information and taking and getting it right, but some of the points have been put about overshadowing, etc. I think we do have to cover this as part of this application. I'll listen to the rest of the committee on this, but I mean, I don't know how long this application is taken anyway to go forward, and this is going to be right through the summer, etc. And if there's a July one, I don't know when it would actually be coming back, Jim, you know, as far as the timing. There are other points to discuss as far as the overshadowing, etc.
I think that would be for discussion once the full application came back. But I will bring in other members first. Councillor Cox.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In light of what has been suggested by the planning officer, I was going to suggest a site visit when you came to the point of do we have enough information? And I think considering all the points that have been raised today, we would be asking for a site visit. Time is now permissible in terms of if a further report is coming back to allow that to happen. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Cox, this wouldn't come back to committee until after recess, so there is time in that time to both get the information required, get the IIA and arrange a site visit, I think. Councillor Casey, Councillor Menard.
Yeah, I would support a site visit, definitely. That would give time for the overshadowing 12 monthly projections to come through, along with definitely the information that is required for the impact assessment that we have to see before we make a decision on this.
Thank you. Councillor Menard.
I would concur with Jim there. I think we should defer this until we actually get an IIA come through with the relevant information that we need before we proceed, because we don't want to get tripped up further down the line.
Thank you. Councillor Tindler, we really don't want to go further into the discussion on the application.
It's fine, Chair. I'm acquiescing to my better, so I agree with you.
Okay. Okay. I think we have agreement, committee, that APP 2026-0305, we will defer this until the next cycle of the area committee, which is to be confirmed. And in the meantime, if the agent works with the planning officer on the requirements. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Yes, there is a site visit. Yes, a site visit prior to it coming back to committee. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just a very quick point to highlight to committee that the next meeting will be on the 18th of August, so that's plenty of time to get the information in and considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Chair.
We suggested a site visit on the 11th of August, but just to note that is during recess.
Yes,
Members are permissible around that. Perfect, thank you.
perfect. Thank you.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay,
But fine holidays, this is it.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on today's agenda is item number 9, APP 2025-1322. Code planning permission for the demolition of a dwelling house and the erection of a replacement dwelling house at 73 Main Street, Fraserburgh. We have Jim Martin and Sean Norman today, and we have a request to speak from Mr. Craig Fowey, the agent, and also in attendance for questions is the applicant Patricia Scott. Committee, are we content to hear the agent and applicant, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you'd just like to take a seat, please. Thank you, Mr. Fowey. You'll be given 5 minutes to speak, and after that, members may ask you questions. You will then be entitled to remain in the meeting until you are not entitled to speak again. Do you understand?
Sure.
Thank you. We'll hear from Mr. Martin first. Mr. Martin, could you introduce the item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this, as you've highlighted there, this is an application for full planning permissions for the demolition of the existing house at number 73 Main Street, Fraserburgh, in the Broadsea area, and the erection of a replacement dwelling house. This is another application, Chair, similar to the Pennon one, where there's been a tandem listed building consent submitted, and that's already been determined refused under delegated powers as per the Council's scheme of governance. The property concerned is a C listed building which lies within the Broadsea Conservation Area. The existing property is a 1.5-storey house of traditional style and proportions, although it was built in the 1960s, as members will note from the report. It's finished with a natural slate roof and has grey wet dash harled walls. As members will see from the plan, it has an attached garage on the southeastern elevation with a lean-to roof. There's also a sun lounge extension to the rear northeast elevation of the property, which faces towards the sea on the shoreline. The proposed replacement house, as members will see from the plan up on the screen just now, has a larger footprint area, although it's not significantly wider in terms of the frontage. It's again of traditional design with the garage attached. As highlighted, the southwest elevation to the road is marginally longer, and the visual changes principally are larger windows at the ground floor level, pitched roof dormers to the roof plane, and pitched roof on the garage. The ridge line of the proposed new development would also be 1.7 metres higher than that of the current property. To the rear of the property, larger pitched roof dormers and a full width flat roofed extension, for want of a better term, will give more ground floor accommodation and, from terms of the first floor dormers, greater views over the sea. The finishes proposed are largely as per the existing house, with a natural slate roof and grey harrow for the walls. Supporting statements submitted with this suggests that the proposals are to deliver a more user-friendly layout for the inside of the property and to take account of future needs of the applicant. There have been supporting information, as members will note from the committee report, along with the application, including a structural survey which states that it's not feasible to renovate to the required standards the current property. And also 2.16 of the report, this carries details of the construction statement submitted as well in support. In terms of representations, there has just been the one letter, and that's in support of the application. The reasons for this highlighted in paragraph 3.1 of the report. In terms of consultation responses, the Archaeology Service has no comments to make. Built Heritage, however, objects to the proposal on the grounds that it doesn't meet policy requirements. Environmental Health and Flood Risk and Coast Protection have no objections to the proposal, no comments to make. And the Roads Development Service similarly. However, in terms of external consultations, Historic Environment Scotland does object to the proposed development on the grounds that the information supplied does not justify demolition of the current property. Main policies for consideration here, Chair, are those relating to listed building consent and all listed buildings and to conservation areas. And this is discussed in detail through paragraphs 6.2 to 6.14 of the report. And the service concludes that the proposal does not comply with local development plan policies HE1 in HE2, nor with MPF or policies 7. The scale and massing also doesn't reflect the existing property, and it's therefore contrary to local development plan policy P1 and 7 and 14 of MPF 4. The conclusion, Chair, is that while what's being proposed may comply with servicing and some other criteria, the main issue is that it does not comply with the listed building and conservation area policies, and the recommendation must therefore be to refuse as contrary to local development plan policy HE1 and 2 and MPF4 policies 7 and 14. And I'll just take members through some more slides of the development. Proposed floor plan layout here. Members will note what I was saying earlier about, for want of a better term, an extension, although in terms of a new build, it was actually just part of the actual development itself. And the photographs now, the current property, members will recall from the images of what's proposed that there would be pitched roof dormers to the front, which would actually be more traditional in terms of appearance, and the window openings at ground floor level would be slightly larger. Street view looking along with the application property centre photograph, and another view of the front of the property looking northwards. Another view with the property highlighted in the background, giving a bit more of the context in terms of surrounding Broadsea area. A view of the rear of the property, showing the sun lounge extension, which I referred to earlier, and the existing single flat roof dormer. That would be replaced on the current proposal with 2 larger pitched roof dormers on either side, symmetrically. Another view of the rear of the property, and another, and final selection of other views, Chair. And that concludes my presentation, Chair. I'll do what I can to answer any questions relating to this. And of course, you've noted already, Mr. Norman is also present to provide committee with assistance on this one, bearing in mind the property's listed status and also its conservation area location. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ogden. You mentioned Historic Environment Scotland. Can you give me clarification, or can Sean give me clarification on that? Should committee agree to grant this application, they can appeal that decision.
You responding, Jim, or do you want me to?
Sounds like Mr. Rome's got in ahead of me, Chair.
Okay. If the committee approve it, that then goes to the minister, and at that time, Historic Environment Scotland could call it in, and they then determine the application.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Finlay.
Thanks, Chair. It's just that obviously local members maybe will know more about it than me, about Broadsea, but it seems unusual there's a 1960s building there. When you're looking at the neighbouring buildings, look so old, you know, they're 18th century sort of looking buildings, maybe even older. So I don't know if the officer can illuminate as to why there's a 1960s building there. I'm not taking away the C listing of it, but it's just trying to get this. Obviously, there's a preamble for the applicant to come forward because they'll know the history. But I just find it unusual. There's a 1960s building there and along 17, whatever, old buildings right next door to it.
Do you want me to answer, Chair?
Please.
Yeah, there was previously a building on the site, and this was constructed, as Jim Martin was saying, in the 1960s, to reference the scale and the form and the treatment of the neighbouring 18th and 19th century buildings. It was deemed an exemplar, and it was used as an example to other parts of Scotland, so that's why it was listed, because it is strange to get in a building that was constructed in the 1960s on the statutory list, but it was seen as a good example, and it filled in the gap that was vacated following the removal of the previous building.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And Councillor Sutherland, your hands up then.
Yeah. My question's been answered. It was just a query on why a 1960s building that doesn't really look in keeping with the ones left and right of it was listed in the first place. But Mr. Norman's explained that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Adams, James Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Just touching on something that Jim said with regards to the plans for the new peaked dormer windows. You're saying that's more in keeping with the look of Broadsea as is. I mean, is there no potential here that this new build could be perhaps done in such a way that it is more in keeping with Broadsea and replacing something that was built in the 1960s to get a more modern use case, obviously future proofing, as the applicant has shown. Is it something you'd worth consider working with the applicant to make sure that it does fit in keeping with the look of Broadsea, whilst also giving them the chance to build a new modern home that does fit their needs?
I'll come back on that one, Chair. It's a good point raised by Councillor Adams there. Yeah, I don't think the planning service is disputing the fact that what's being proposed here in terms of the design is a good design. It does incorporate a lot of elements which are traditional to properties within conservation areas and older listed building. And we've heard Mr. Norman explain the somewhat exceptional example here that it was actually a 1960s house that's on site at present. Yes, there are elements of the design here and finishes which are very good. However, that does not in itself justify demolition of an existing property, and that is the key issue here, is demolition of a current listed building. Thank you.
Just briefly, Chair, thank you for letting me back in. Really, it's kind of sitting in my head now that the reason that it's listed, and from Sean, what you're saying there, is it's an exemplar for the whole of Scotland, actually stated, of a replacement building within a conservation area. So in the 1960s, the original 18th or 19th century building that was there was gone for whatever reason. And this is a replacement building for one of those 18th, 19th century buildings, but it's held as an exemplar of a replacement building within a conservation area. And that's why it's listed. So I take it as the quality of the build, etc., and fitting in to the setting. So that's going with the conservation area. Oh, Butterish, London and Low. Thanks, Chair. It's just to confirm that it's for our consideration. I think it's Councillor James's points well made as well, and that it's just to get the whole context on the officers and why it's listed, and why HES are doing it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Oh, okay. So, Mr. Norman, if it was an exemplar, was that based on the design or the quality of the build?
It was
Because-
in terms of the design fitted into the locality. At the time in the 60s, most people were designing more contemporary designs and using modern materials that would have been deemed inappropriate in Broadsea at that time. So they designed this building specifically for that location. And if you walk down Broadsea, you'll see the buildings are located both sides of Main Street. So it was designed specifically for that locality.
Thank you.
It's a bit bright, Chair. so I'm blinking. Yeah, no, thanks, Chair, that's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Sutherland.
Yeah, a question for Mr. Norman. Sean, if we could in the 1960s build something that was exemplar, justify that, and then list it, would it not be possible now with the technology and building that we have now to actually make a better exemplar here? Now, I mean, if this had been an original building built in, 18 whatever or before that, I can see the justification of saying, you can't knock this down to list the building, but this is a 1960s building, and if we are able to actually build a better example, would that not be something worth considering, or is that not something we can do? Thank you.
Chair, as most elected members probably know, there's a significant number now of 20th century buildings that are now listed. Like there's some big tower blocks in the city of Aberdeen that have listed, and the general premise is that we can't, as in the planning service, can't give consent for the demolition unless it's clearly shown that the existing building is incapable of repair and or no longer has special interest. Because, like I say, the Aberdeen City Council have similar issues in terms of buildings that they believe are in need of replacement, but they cannot take them down because they've got the listing from the time that they were constructed in the 1960s. Because we're now getting buildings that are listed that were built in the 1980s. Because what they're saying is 65 years when this building was probably built, it still merits protection. So that's where we're stuck, shall we say, as a planning service. We have to adhere to the national guidance.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor James Adams.
Thank you. Ian sort of touched on my point. My question was going to be, can we replace an exemplar with an exemplar? I mean, this building is not historic. It's not part of the original fabric of Broadsea. So I find that, while I might disagree with the justification, I find that if we keep going down this quite restrictive route, are we going to discourage young people or people who come into Fraserburgh and Broadsea from taking on these older properties and refurbishing them? And could we end up with lots of empty properties in that area of the town in years to come if we make it too difficult for people to rebuild and renovate these? Thank you.
I think that was more a statement than a question, so I'll move on to Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much, Jim. I'm the same as Councillor Sutherland and Councillor Adams in one way why this can't be an exemplar. But my question is, if the applicant thinks this house is incapable of being repaired and it can't be repaired, then what happens? Does it just stand there and is left? Okay. That is a question.
Mr. Martin or Mr. Norman?
I'll come in first if you like, Chair. to say that the agents have submitted some information in support of the proposal here, indicating some of the costs of repair works. However, it's the conclusion of the planning service that we don't have enough in the way of information here to justify a recommendation of approval in this case. I do say Mr. Norman, who's far more expert in matters relating to listed buildings than I, will be able to offer a bit more information with regard to this. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. The applicants engaged the services of Cameron Ross, and they've done a visual inspection, but not a detailed structural survey to say that the building is brought beyond repair. So that's the sticking point, both from ourselves and Historic Environment Scotland. They need to clearly show that the building is incapable of repair before they would concede the demolition of the building.
Thank you. That was one of the questions I was going to ask for the applicants, whether that information would be extended, but we'll go back to Councillor Cassie at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Norman, you mentioned that it can't be repaired or is of special interest in relation to the listing status of the building and the likes. And during the presentation by Mr. Martin, there was mentioning of it's to future-proof the site. What are we talking about in relation to future-proofing?
I did not say it was beyond incapable of repair. The applicant needs to prove that. In terms of future-proofing, it would be no different from any other listed building.
Are we talking about future-proofing of the building, or are we talking about future-proofing of the occupants? In which case, we're wandering into impact assessment areas again. And is it the building, or is it the occupant or the owner of the building who wants to do this work that we're talking about?
I deal solely with the building.
Okay, Mr. Martin, could you enlighten?
Yeah, the point that I would have made in response to that, Chair, is that we're dealing with what is at the present in terms of the building and the application itself. We're not dealing, as I've said with the committee in other cases in recent years, we're not dealing with what may be or what might happen. We're dealing with what is. I hope that sort of clarifies the position for Councillor Cassie. Thank you.
Councillor Adams, James Adams.
Thank you, Chair. I can't remember what section it is in the planning application report, but there is mention of the house as it currently is not suitable for accessibility ramps to be installed. Can you confirm that, Mr. Martin? And would that not be taken into consideration with regards to making this house accessible to anyone should they need it?
That is indeed in the report, Chair. And in terms of the specific matter, you obviously have Mr. Fyvie as the agent here present at the meeting, and the applicant. They may be able to provide a committee with more information in relation to that, which will help with the determination. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further indications from Mr. Martin or Mr. Norman, so therefore I will now ask Mr. Fyvie if we could address the committee, please. You have 5 minutes. I'm going to give 1 minute one.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. To the untrained eye, it might look like a traditional main street house. It might look like it's been there for centuries. It might even look traditionally built. However, as the saying goes, looks can be deceiving. The existing house doesn't appear to have any architectural merit. This is quite a bold statement to make, I know. However, the reason I say this is because, as has already been mentioned, it was built in the 1960s, and from the structural reports, it's been proven that it's through inferior building materials, and it is apparently it's an imitation design. It currently has non-traditional dormers, non-traditional windows, and stated in the engineer's report, again, it says low quality materials. Also, to the back of the house, there is a sun lounge, which is not traditionally found in a house of this style. A structural report been carried out as noted in 2.14 of the report, and it recommends demolition as the conclusion. This is found in the final paragraph of the report. One key point is that the house is experiencing maximum safe stress levels. This is particularly concerning. Stated in 2.16, a report was carried out by Cairnhill Developments, who have over 50 years experience in the building industry. They concluded that a renovation is not financially viable and that a rebuild is the most economic option. A rebuild would be in the region of £90,000 less than a renovation. In response to 4.2, we believe that these reports justify the replacement and meet policy. We believe that these professional reports have covered the requirements. Setting the costs and construction aside, as has been mentioned by some of the councillors, the existing access to the house is extremely poor. This is in part the fact that the house is directly on the pavement. There's currently a step to the front door which creates a trip hazard for the public. If we were to improve the accessibility arrangements, we'd have to do that via an access ramp, which we couldn't install on a public road. Looking at slide number 13 of the presentation, you can see the rear of the property where you have to go down the driveway, down 4 steps to get to the patio level. On the right-hand side of the photograph, you have to go back up another 4 steps and then back up another 4 steps to get to floor level. So to create an accessible ramp in that position would be extremely difficult. I used the term future-proofing in my submission because we didn't want to bring forward some private medical ailments. But that being said, the future-proofing is what we're focusing on, is the entire house going forward, not just for today. But as it currently stands, access is poor, not just for our applicant, but for guests to the house as well, given the fact that there has to be a lowering of the floor, which then creates DPC issues, which has been alluded to in the structural report. It is our belief that a replacement house is far more traditional in design than the existing house. It adds more commonly found features in the Fraserburgh area, which is found on slide number 16 of the presentation, in terms of dormers, window proportions, etc. The design will also incorporate energy efficient heating systems that are required for current building regulations. We will be retaining the main house wall and building around this to retain some of the house. It is our hope that members could support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Committee, we have questions for Mr. Mark Flyway or the applicant. Councillor Van Buchan.
No, thanks, Chair. A few questions on this, Lawrence, and it's really important that we get this right. As far as the building itself, just to try and get some more information on this. Now, the officers are stating that the reason it's listed as an exemplar of a replacement building within a conservation area. Obviously, the conservation area has been a conservation area for quite a while, but this was an exemplar in the 1960s. So it's your point on that, but also you mentioned about the building itself, and this was being raised by the local members on this. And you mentioned maximum stress levels. If you can further illuminate us on that. Inferior building materials, what do you mean? Is it breeze blocks? Is it, I'm sure back in the 60s they were still putting asbestos on roofs back then. I don't know. I was only a little chap. You mentioned DP issues, and I do see that sun lounge, I don't know how old that sun lounge is, but it looks like a 1960s, 70s sort of sun lounge as well. And the sort of the concrete sort of patio bit round about there. Just more information on the building itself. You have a chance to further illuminate about the building and the inferior quality within that, just to give us an idea of what it is and what it's made of, and see where the officers, I'm sure Sean will come back and give us some more information about it as to why it's an exemplar. But is an exemplar in the 1960s, is it still an exemplar now? That's a question we've got to answer. Thank you.
So, Councillor Finlay, the materials would be blockwork, and that would have been sort of before the concrete revolution as it was known. So it would have been the sort of the early phase of that materials coming in. So it would have been low density concrete blockwork. So nowadays, if you're building a modern house, it would be dense concrete blockwork. In terms of the floors, they're constructed out of timber, and they are mentioned in the structural report as having evidence of rot as well, which I understand in circumstances that can be rectified, but the overall conclusion of the report says that the low use of materials quality is a factor in the conclusion. The sunlight at the back, when was that constructed?
Yeah, that was constructed fairly recently, actually. I would think maybe 20 years ago, 20 odd years ago, all with full planning consent. All the works that was done because my father started having a series of strokes, and obviously, like everyone else in the North East, wants to stay in their own house. But to make that viable, we would take, extend to create greater floor space for it. So it was built with full planning permission. It's probably the best bit of the build of the whole house. Because in relation to what you're asking about the conditions, I would have to say I was horrified when I read the structural engineer's report. I had no idea it was so bad. But Craig can comment more about the building. I think they were fairly typical of the time when it was built.
In terms of modern building regulations, there's a focus on junctions, so where the floor meets the wall, where the roof meets the wall, etc. In a house of this standard, that was not paramount. So you will find that in terms of energy efficiency, the heating's on all the time because they are blowing through the house all the time. Because these junctions at that stage of construction were not, it was very early, as I said earlier, it wasn't something that was focused on, which is now, where we're looking to create airtight buildings via air tests, etc. So there wasn't an emphasis. So probably, to be fair, wouldn't have been that sort of focus because it was an unknown construction very, very early in that method of construction. So these are the problems that, generally speaking, a lot of houses are finding when you're taking up the carpets. There's inch gaps between the walls, which has an impact on the energy efficiency of the building.
No, thank you. That's been useful. Thank you.
Thank you. So my question was asked and sort of half answered. Should the committee ask, are you able to provide a more detailed structural survey and costs related to the rebuild so that we can make a judgment on that?
That's entirely possible. I think we've chosen a very competent engineer for the report, and also I mentioned that Kernel Developments have got 50 years experience, so we've gone for somebody at the very top of the game in terms of the reports. So we can certainly elaborate on them if required.
Okay. Betty, do you have any further questions for the applicant or the agent? No. Okay. So, Mr. Martin, have you anything to add, or Mr. Norman, on what has been said in the request to speak?
I was just going to come back, Chair, on a couple of points in terms of what Mr. Fyvie has said there. No specific issues with that. Just highlight the fact that members got into the discussion about an IIA with the last application that we looked at. Just to confirm that what was done in this instance, and it concluded that alterations can be made to the existing dwelling house to make it more accessible. And just to highlight the issue, which I'm sure members are tired of hearing me and others saying, is that in determining an application like this, costs are not a material consideration. Thank you.
Okay. Can I then ask you, Mr. Martin, was Historic Environment Scotland provided with the information on the structural survey and the rebuild costs?
They were certainly provided with some of the initial assessment, Chair, but not the information that was submitted latterly. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's started with that?
Yeah, I think it's important. I just kind of through the chair to
it's to Mr. Martin.
It's officers, yeah, if you don't mind, to Sean, if you don't mind, Mr. Norman. It's because I've just to try to get around my head with it. And I think it's really important we get this right because, you know, as far as the conservation, it is a category C listed building, and we keep saying it's listed because of an exemplar of a replacement building in a conservation area. But again, this was in the 1960s. So really now, going with this information that we've got about the building from it, and obviously, Sean, you've done an awful lot of work probably on this building, looking at the material that had been used and the points that we made, block work. And I know this because some of my house is built of this same sort of low density block work, and the point about the joints, etc., leading in and the rotten floors. I think that's important. In 1960s, this might well be an exemplar, but is it an exemplar now of a replacement building? And that's the question to yourself as a conservation officer. And, you know, if there is a better building that's put in this place, would that not then be an exemplar of a replacement building within a conservation area?
Chair, we have to take it on the basis that the building's listed. In terms of the drafts and so forth, I would imagine all the properties that sit within the Broadsea conservation area have the same issues, and obviously that's why I don't think any of them would meet current building standards. There's a means of improving the existing building, the fabric of the existing building, rather than completely demolishing it. And it's on the basis of that information and the need for that information in order to support, if that's the case, the demolition of the building. Until we have all the information at our disposal, we cannot support it. I hope that answers the question.
No, thanks, Chair. I'll lead me on to the discussion, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
James,
thank you.
James Adams.
Thank you. A question from Mr. Norman, just based on what something Mr. Martin said, that this decision that was reached by Historic Environment Scotland not to grant approval for demolition was done so without having the full details of this report provided by the applicant in terms of the costs for refurbishment. Is that correct?
I don't know, because that's out with my remit, Councillor Adams.
Okay.
Okay. I don't see any further questions for the officers. Therefore, committee, before we go on to consider this further, and I confirm that members are satisfied that they have received all the necessary information and feel able to participate in the determination of this application. Councillor Bell.
Chair, no, I do not feel I have all the information that's required. I think this is necessary for a site visit. There's a great lack of information that the Historic Scotland seem to have, and I certainly have a lot of questions. And I also think a site visit would give the opportunity to members who are not familiar with that site to see the house in the context of the other area. So I would propose a site visit and give us time for more information that is required, and I would take a second, please.
Okay, I'll just bring in the other councillors, Councillor Findlater.
Yeah, I would be happy to support Councillor Bell on a site visit for this one, but can we include the inside of the building if that's possible? Because I think a lot of this is to do with the material, etc. And this is points that applicants made. We have had site visits where the inside has been shown. I think it's important because it's the whole structure of the building, not just the outside, it's the inside too. But I don't know if that's possible with the applicant at all, Chair. We have done it in the past, about a decade or so ago, as far as the inside is concerned, and that was, I think, the Coast Guard building, the bridge, because it was inside, because it's built on, it's not got foundations. Anyway, that's 10 years ago. Can it be included inside the building because it's about the materials being used, the block work, except for the rotted roofs and the joints?
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just really to clarify with members, Chair, there's been discussion about further structural survey reports and perhaps needing that as further information.
Yeah.
And I am not a structural engineer, so I couldn't possibly comment, but I do wonder if the information that Councillor Findlater is looking at from being, internally viewing the property is actually information you will get from the report. And that report would then allow the planning officers and the planning service to consider that updated information as well. I'm not sure any of us are particularly qualified to judge the inside of
To the come back, I totally get your point
Yeah.
on that one, and I'm no structural engineer whatsoever, but it's just things that we are being asked. You know, we're not planners, you know, we're just councillors that are making a decision, the information is in front of us, but you make a very good point. And then through the chair, with this more detailed information, because I am really nervous about, you know, putting forward knocking any building down. Some of the mistakes have been made in the past with knocking down buildings, but it's to get that question across about the state of the building with that chair. I don't know if we can defer it until we get this information.
That's why I'm taking in the councillors to ensure that we have answered all the further information we require. So we do need more detailed structural surveys done. We do need better costings done. I will take in councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. I was just about to ask for those exact things. I agree to a site visit and would like to see more details with regards to the structural and costing reports. Thank you.
Councillor Sutherland.
Yes, in the light of this being deferred for a visit, possibly, is it possible to get like a visual mock-up of what the new building would look like? You know, some kind of 3D or some kind of, you know, AI type mock-up of, so we can see what it could be replaced with. Because my concerns are that if for some reason we did go along that line, that what we bought is very important that it's in keeping. Because I feel that this 1960s, it may be an exemplar, but it's not identical to other buildings wrong-sided. And it would be important that whatever does go up, if it should go that way, it is actually better than what we have at the moment. Is that possible?
Mr. Bivey?
Anything's possible, yeah.
Anything's possible. Very good. Just for confirmation, we get the site visit, we get this new information, Jim, that is then also supplied to HES?
Certainly, Chair, we can reconsult with HES if there is new information submitted in support of the application, which may change both the council's position and theirs.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right, I think we have a fairly unanimous point that we defer APP 2025-1322. I think we have the information we will require to come back to committee, and we will wait for that to, it won't be coming back now until after recess.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for coming along today. I think, folks, we have been going for quite a while now. I think we will take a 10-minute recess, coming back at 12:15, please.